My name is Jacob Harrington, and together with teammates Christina Honeycutt, Dingyu Yang, and Wenpeng Yin, we created Prioritizing Multimodal Connections for Newton, New Transit-Oriented Neighborhoods. Our project is focused on the city of Newton, which is located just outside of Boston, Massachusetts. Newton is 18.2 square miles with a population of about 90,000. There are 7 colleges and universities and 11 rail stops in Newton, and the median single-family house price in 2016 was $1.1 million. Like much of Greater Boston, the city of Newton is currently experiencing growth, and the city is preparing for ways to plan for the future. In the city's comprehensive plan, they indicate that the goals for Newton align with the vision for livable communities in Massachusetts, which include supporting transit-oriented development and smart growth zoning. Additionally, the city has prepared a vision for their transportation system, where they have laid out broad goals to achieve safe, smart, accessible, livable, and sustainable transportation by 2040. In this figure from the Newton Leads 2040 Transportation Strategy Report, it is clear that people commuting within Newton are primarily commuting by vehicle, while only 4% are walking and only 1% are biking, according to U.S. Census data from 1980 to 2010. The city has set a target for 2040 to decrease auto usage and increase other modes such as public transportation, biking, and walking. Newton is situated to the west of Boston and is served by the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority Green Line D branch. At the terminus of the D branch is our site, Riverside Station. Currently, Riverside is a parking lot. However, a development is planned for the site that will add a significant number of housing units and office space to the area. Newton residents were invited to a visioning open house to provide insights on the proposed development, where there were several comments regarding concerns about congestion, as well as a wish to provide better connections and improved walkways/biking opportunities. Clearly, multimodal connectivity is important to the residents of Newton surrounding the Riverside site. So what is multimodal accessibility? It accounts for the differing capabilities of different modes of travel, including their availability, speed, density, limits, costs, and therefore their most appropriate uses. Good multimodal accessibility could provide for a decrease in congestion and vehicle emissions, while also providing options for people who don't own a vehicle to use this transit station. The Newton 2040 vision does not currently outline any specific plans for increasing multimodal access directly to the Riverside MBTA site. So our research aims to analyze the current situation and propose plans that align with Newton's vision. This graph shows that a majority of people traveling to the Riverside Green Line station do so by car, and the majority of those using car are driving alone, according to the 2015 to 2017 MBTA System-Wide Passenger Survey. The area surrounding Riverside deserves a closer look to see why the majority of travelers choose to drive to the site and what can be done to encourage walking, biking, and public transportation. This brings us to our research question. Is there quality multimodal access connecting the Newton villages of Auburndale and Lower Falls to the Riverside Station? We then follow this up with a sub-question: how can the city of Newton prioritize multimodal access? To give us some more context of the area we are analyzing, consider the map to the left. We see the village of Auburndale to the north of Riverside Station and Lower Falls to the south. Grove Street and Lexington Street are 2 major streets that connect the Riverside Station to the surrounding residents. There are also 2 highways, I-90 and I-95, which pass through this area. Surrounding the Riverside Station, there is a golf course to the east and the Charles River to the west. Because of this, Grove Street becomes the only way for local residents to access Riverside Station. The scope of our research encompasses the 2 Newton villages surrounding Riverside, Lower Falls and Auburndale. We analyzed 4 modes of mobility and their quality of access to Riverside. Only one MBTA bus route connects to Riverside, Route 558. It makes several stops through northern Auburndale, signified by the 5-minute walking radius circles, but does not have any stops in the Lower Falls area. For biking and car, we analyzed several of the major roads, including Grove Street, Commonwealth Avenue, and Lexington Street. Finally, our walk analysis encompassed a 10-minute walking radius around Riverside, and we only considered public roads in this area. Our method of analysis sought to evaluate the quality of access for each of these modes with respect to their safety, infrastructure, and experience. We broke up each mode's scope into smaller street segments, always keeping in mind the distance and location to Riverside as it is related to each segment. We categorized each of our findings for each street segment into good, green, average, yellow, and bad, red. What follows is a brief breakdown of how we analyzed each mode of transportation. For automobile, we used the traffic function on Google Maps to find the road congestion of Grove Street and other major roads in Auburndale and Lower Falls. We selected a typical Wednesday and Saturday to represent the status of weekday and weekend traffic. A total of 24 sections of the two neighborhoods were selected, and traffic conditions at 6 a.m., 9 a.m., 12 p.m., 3 p.m., 6 p.m., and 9 p.m. were recorded. For example, you can see the typical Wednesday traffic overlaid on the maps in the middle at 6 a.m. and 5 p.m. Here are 3 pictures visually showing what good, average, and bad traffic looks like. For the analysis of the bike portion of our research, the major streets such as Grove Street and Lexington Street were divided into 65 segments and then examined according to questions related to bike lanes, road width, on-street parking, street lights, and road traffic. We also looked at the intersections between each segment. For example, did each have stop signs or bike lanes observed? The image in the middle of the slide is one example of how we analyzed each segment. It is one part of Grove Street, starting from Myrtle Avenue and ending at Hancock Street, and shows how a typical street fares in our questionnaire. Once again, you can see what good, average, and bad biking conditions look like, as well as the criteria that goes into each. The bus scope encompassed the only MBTA route to pass through the villages of Auburndale and Lower Falls, the 558 route that can be seen on the map to the left in blue. We analyzed each bus stop as a separate data point, and some examples of our criteria can be seen to the right. For example, at this bus stop, Commonwealth Avenue and Lexington Street, there is a good pedestrian connection, there are benches but no shelters, the next bus stop is close by, however, the bus route is infrequent and is more expensive than average. Overall, this bus stop was rated poorly. Here are several examples of more bus stops that we analyzed through our methodology as categorized as either good, average, or bad. There's an extensive amount of literature, including from Forsyth and Speck, on measuring walkability, as well as the well-known walk score, which factors in how walkable an area is by its proximity to restaurants and other nearby amenities. However, since we were most interested in the specific walkability from particular locations to the Riverside Transit Station, we decided to utilize the MAPS mini-survey tool by Kane et al. We did an audit of all the routes within a 10-minute walk to the transit station, as this is the standard distance set for walking to transit. Using key factors selected from the literature, we analyzed both sides of the road for 34 road segments. For example, this particular segment is located in Lower Falls and is on the left side of the road walking towards Grove Street. As we can see, there are no street lights installed, abundant tree coverage, incomplete, and hazardous walkways. You can see that in order to walk along this segment, you have to either go in the road or into a private yard, as the sidewalk ends and other hazards make it more difficult to walk. At the intersection, we noticed individuals trying to cross the primary road, Grove Street, with no crosswalk and essentially running to avoid getting hit by vehicles. Again, here are examples of good, average, and bad walking conditions. This methodology applied to each mode resulted in the following maps. We can see that the traffic conditions for bicycles and buses are very poor, whereas walking is overall okay, and, for many residents, driving is indeed the best choice. For example, consider walking from Auburndale to Riverside Station. Biking or riding the bus are both basically impossible. Walkability is good throughout, and driving is also a good choice. But for people from Lower Falls trying to get to the station, the walking experience deteriorates and, for many, leaves no good choice but to drive. Based on these charts, we have arrived at an answer to our first research question. No, there is not quality multimodal access to Riverside from Auburndale and Lower Falls, and improvements are needed. Let's identify on the map several problems that are holding residents back from having a menu of transportation options. For traveling by car, there is congestion during peak hours, especially on Grove Street. For biking, there are almost no bike lanes in these two neighborhoods, though some streets are wide enough for bike lanes to be added. On the other hand, some streets are too narrow to include bike lanes. Additionally, there are insufficient bike racks at some frequent destinations, especially Riverside Station itself. For walking, some places simply do not have sidewalks, or the sidewalks at some places are incomplete or are hazardous along certain routes. There are some problems which will both affect the walking and biking scores. Intersections are unsafe because of a lack of stop signs and crosswalks. Some streets have too few streetlights or lack them completely. For the bus, residents are limited from using this mode of transportation due to the limited catchment area of the 558 as well as its infrequent schedule. Based on the problems we have identified, we came up with several recommendations. For biking, the City of Newton should create marked bike lanes along the major roads in Auburndale and Lower Falls. The dark blue lines suggest bike lane locations. The dark blue dashed lines represent where the street is too narrow for separate bike lanes and therefore where it is advisable for Newton to add shared bike/car lanes. Besides creating marked bike lanes for improving biking experience and safety, it can be beneficial in some areas, mostly in Lower Falls, to remove some on-street parking. Lastly, more bike rack availability should be added to high-frequency destinations such as Riverside Station to encourage biking. For walking, repairing the sidewalks along some routes is important to improve the pedestrian experience. Stop signs and crosswalks should be installed at all Grove Street intersections for making walking and biking safer options. The brown line in the figure shows where to install streetlights to improve walking and biking safety at night. And for the bus route, we recommend creating a new bus line for the residents living in Lower Falls that will travel along Grove Street. Visualized here are all the multimodal improvements we suggest for the villages of Auburndale and Lower Falls. Digging a bit deeper into the bus proposal, what we want to do with this new bus route is to add a frequent service that is convenient for residents to access Riverside. This could take the form of an MBTA route or a city or developer-sponsored shuttle. The important thing to focus on are the benches, a less than 15-minute headways between buses, and stops that are close together, about a quarter mile. As you can see from the map to the right, the new route with these proposed stops would greatly increase the number of residents within a 5-minute walking radius from a bus stop. As indicated, Lower Falls has poor access to Riverside, and shown here is the bridge that crosses over I-95 into Auburndale. On a beautiful day that we planned for our site visit, there were no other pedestrians that were out for a walk in this unwelcoming environment. We hope by implementing the changes that we have proposed as part of this project, more residents in Lower Falls and Auburndale will have additional options to connect and have a more thriving environment and see their community enjoying the neighborhoods. In conclusion, we found that the current transportation network in Auburndale and Lower Falls favors automobiles but offers inadequate infrastructure for walking, biking, and public transportation, resulting in poor safety and a poor experience for these users. We know that the City of Newton is committed to promoting multimodal transportation access across the city, and we hope that they can implement important changes that will directly impact the villages of Lower Falls and Auburndale. The city could bring in residents to help involve the community in the analyzing process. Additionally, the city can leverage the developers through the special permit process to help enhance the infrastructure needs. We hope that as more TODs are implemented in neighborhoods across Newton, there will be a priority to similarly analyze the areas around all MBTA stations, to not only help achieve the city's transportation vision, but make sure connections are generated to improve the lives of Newton residents, and ultimately to create new transit-oriented neighborhoods, not just isolated developments. Thank you for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed our presentation.